Yes, I know exactly what you're going to say at True Vintage RC. How is it that a Tamiya 501X and the Yokomo Mr4BX, how can that possibly be vintage? Well, okay, I'm not going to claim that it is, but let me just say this. When I was racing, when I first purchased my 501X back in around 2007, it almost shocks me to say that that was almost 20 years ago now. It's 2026. Yeah, that just blows my mind. I've just had a bit of a think about that. But anyway, onwards with this video. So, yeah, obviously I raced the 501X, and I used to hear back in the day that it was a carbon copy of the Yokomo, and I'm here to dispel that myth. I'm going to show in this build video the maybe some of the similarities, but how many differences there are between the two platforms. So, yeah, they've both got carbon fibre chassis. They've both got blue anodised alloy parts. And, they always do look a lot the same to the untrained eye. But sadly, they're not. Not many parts can be swapped over, not even the suspension arms, without drilling and modifying or whatever you got to do to make them work. But anyway, let's start here with Tamiya's center bulkhead. So, yeah, the motor does bolt to the side of this, and the lay shaft passes through one side of this. And I'm going to share with you now they call these belt tensioners. Now, they are not belt tensioners. They don't actually tension the belt. What they actually do is they actually hold the belt closer to the center pulley there. And what that does is it stops the belt from wanting to skip over or the pulley from slipping underneath of the belt tension. So, yeah, they wind in. You don't want them to be wound in so tight they're pressed hard against the belt on that pulley. You just want them to basically, anytime that belt wants to skip off the pulley, it's going to keep them engaged between the belt and the pulley. So, yeah, it's supposed to stop the slip. Now, the world's version, which is what this car here is, has the 18-tooth center lay shaft pulleys. Well, the original one, pretty sure it was a 16-tooth. And let me tell you, with a 5.5-turn brushless modified motor back then, I was shredding belts and shredding those pulleys. So anyway, now here we are onto the Tamiya lay shaft. So these are the world's pulleys, so they are the 18-tooth, and they just key into that hub there as they slide into place. So you've got both front and rear pulley, and then on goes the inner slipper plate. And on the left-hand side of the screen here, we've got the Yokomo ball race pulley, and you've got the Tamiya one, and these are the eccentrics. And yeah, there are lots of parallels to be drawn here. Now, I'm not so sure you can actually fit these parts from one car to the other, but I highly doubt it. And those bearings that the diffs run on are the same size also. But yeah, check out the difference in the diff rings here for the ball diffs. Very, very different. Yeah, the Tamiya setup is really, really good, and older, or that pulley, it goes right back, I'm pretty sure, even to the YZ10. So they go back years. So anyway, here is a little tip that I did back in the day. Now, you could buy these little sticker discs for the Tamiya. I don't think you could buy them for the Yokomo, but yeah, I used to just make these up myself. So I'd take an old decal sheet, and then I'd trace around the pulley. And the idea is it acts as a barrier. It stops the dirt and grit from getting into the grease in those ball diffs. Because the cars, yes, they wear an under tray, but they do actually get quite a bit of dust and stuff ingressed into those sensitive areas. So this prevents a lot of dust and stuff from getting into those into the grease in the ball diffs. So what I do with this extra piece of the backing here is I actually stick the paper side down onto that pulley, and it just stops that or onto that sticker, sorry, and it just stops that sticker from actually sticking to the metal outdrive there. So when you push it down, they do come in close contact with the outdrive sometimes, and that just allows it to slip and doesn't bind up as it's sticking to the pulley there. So yeah, that's not my invention, but yeah, it has been done for other cars as well. And I also do it on my 870C, believe it or not. It actually works as well for that, and it just gives you more runtime between needing to service the diffs, which I think works really great because it stops the dust getting in there, and it's just worked for me. So anyway, thought I'd share this little tidbit with the RC community, and you never know, if it works for you, try it out. If you don't want to, you can rebuild your diffs more often. But anyway, just to prove the point, I am actually going to do the same thing with the MR4BX, and as you can see there, I'm just showing that the backing piece still sits inside of the pulley, so the sticker can stick down nicely to the side of the pulley. Yeah, that's with the eccentrics fitted. So both cars, of course, have the eccentrics adjusters front and rear, and that is what actually adjusts the belt tension. So, yeah, the MR4BX, you can buy a small belt adjuster which bolts to the underside of the belt. It's to the rear belt actually, and that actually, I've got a couple on their way now. With thanks to Keith who's sending them over from the USA. But yeah, there you go. That's the eccentric, and they do key into those bulkheads there. Now, I just went along with what the instructions suggested, but I went back afterwards and backed them off a little bit. I felt the belts were a little bit too tight, so you might want to check that yourself. I wasn't quite happy with what the manual recommended. So anyway, yeah, here we go. Now, I do not even understand why the design of the MR4BX has that plate, and I think I may have been told a long time ago it was more it was more for helping with rougher tracks. So there was obviously another version after the MR4BX. There was the world's version as well, and that was a one-piece chassis that kept that same plane of that chassis. It didn't have that piece that raised up at the rear. But anyway, I'm yet to drive one, so I would like to see how it works. And here we are with the rear bulkhead built. And you can see the diff center in there, and now onto the rear shock tower. Now, I'm not following the build instructions for the Yokomo, as in series. I'm actually building as per how the Tamiya goes together, because I wanted to make the comparisons from left to right as I go through these builds. And also, I've gone with full stainless steel hardware, or hex drive stainless steel hardware. From back in the day, the original Tamiya 501X screw kit was absolutely atrocious. You would not dare put any Loctite on it because you could never get the damn screws out. They were horrible. They were made of cheese. They were very soft, and I had so many dramas with those screws. I would absolutely recommend you do not use the Tamiya screws. They were terrible. Anyway, also I've gone with stainless steel hex drive. What would you call them? Ball studs, sorry, ball studs on both cars. I've gone away from Tamiya's ones as well, so I'm pretty sure I'm running Yokomo on both cars. So yeah, now this is another interesting tidbit with the Yokomo is they have the front. The front part of the bulkhead, the aluminium lower section, goes onto the side pods before that gets bolted to the chassis. And yes, you can see some scratch on it there. This is a used car. Yeah, it all just keys into place. I mean, that's what the beauty is of these era of cars. You know, they went away from more of the plastics and they went more into the aluminium, and they just a really amazing snapshot in time, because even after the Yokomo, and in fact even after the Tamiya, they started going back to plastic tub chassis. You know, the Yokomo had the BMAX 4, and the Tamiya went to, you know, I guess the Durga and all those kind of chassis as well. And yeah, Tamiya seemed to go away from all of that, and the exciting thing about Tamiya back in this era was they were really branching into a whole new sort of platform, you know, away from the plastic type cars. And of course, the attraction for me with the Tamiya was that, this was the first Tamiya four-wheel drive that was, you know, was going to be very competitive. And, you know, I just wanted to have a crack at it. There was a bunch of different cars out there, and I could have got like the Laser ZX5, or maybe, and I did actually have the the J Concepts BJ4 Worlds Edition. I had that kit, never got around to building it. It was a lovely kit, but I don't know. I just kept on hanging in there with a Tamiya, and I had a lot of fun and success driving a Tamiya. Now, I was never really after the big wins, and I just liked the experience of going on the track and put the car around the track and racing it with friends. So it served its purpose. So yeah, here we are now onto the steering bell cranks. Very, very different setup here. And yeah, also between the MR4BX and then the World's version, the steering changed significantly as well. It had this really interesting concept here of dual servo savers there, left and right. So anyway, I don't know why they needed two, but maybe it was just a case of making less parts so they could get the car done without having to make more parts than they needed. Who knows? But anyway, as you can see, I'm just checking the depth of the thread on that screw, making sure everything goes together. Again, I didn't completely only always follow every recommendation of screw size for the cars. I tend to look for how deep the material is that you're screwing into and what will allow it to get in there without, you don't want it to be too long, you don't want it to be too short. I don't want things fouling on the track. And well, the concept of this these builds is I'm going to be driving both of them, so they're both going to be set up and taken out the track and driven. And I want to see how the Yokomo drives, because I've never driven one of these cars, and I also just want to be reminded of how the Tamiya drives. So yep, there's the eccentric there, and that's on the front diff of the Tamiya, and that's where the alignment should go. But again, I put this all together as per the instructions, but I went back and I adjusted them again. I wasn't quite happy. I wanted them just to be a little bit looser. And yeah, like this car will probably run, I'm going to say maybe like a 12 double brushed motor. So I'm not going to put a brushless, it's going to go brushed. And I'll put a little KO ESC in there. And yeah, I've got some saddle pack batteries so I can take it out and give it a run and have some fun. So anyway, onto the front bulkhead here. We're putting it together here with the camber link plate. And yeah, that's another interesting piece that went into the World's car. They seem to have changed the geometry of this plate. Now, I don't have an original one to compare it to, but the photos do show that it is different from the original version. So yeah, here we are now onto the front diff for the Yokomo. And again, sharing with these eccentrics. And yeah, they do go together very differently from between the Yokomo and the Tamiya. All of the build process was very different between the two. But yeah, as I said, I've actually just tried to basically have the Yokomo follow on the same I guess, build or method of build as the Tamiya, and I've just made things work for the sake of this video. So we can see this top plate going on here, and that does carry the steering post as well, and it just does span between the front bulkhead and the center bulkhead where the lay shaft goes, and for the motor. Yeah, so I'm just going around nipping up all the screws now, just making sure they're all nice and tight. Everything's been thread locked. So if you don't see it being thread locked on camera, I promise you, every single metal to metal screw was thread locked. And now onto the front tower for the BX. Now, I've seen, it's been some time, but back when I was racing at Chargers, Pedro was racing the MR4BX in modified, and my God, I was just so impressed to watch that thing go around. And yeah, at the time, I think I even moved back into stock at one point. I think I went back into stock, and yeah, I was trying to learn the racecraft, and yeah, I was learning the hard way, that's for sure, because when you put a 5.5 turn in a four-wheel drive and you want to go out there. Now, I was only running sub-C cells back then, but the car was still very quick. And yeah, I learnt by trial by fire, I can assure you of that. And I never raced mod back in the 80s at Bormac. I was always just a 540 or a stock driver. Never did get to mod, but I thought, well, bugger it, I'm going to have a crack now. So yep, onto these unis here. So the Tamiya unis have a little bit of wear in them, which is pretty standard. I remember back in the day, I used to swap holes in those in their dog bones because they had two sets of holes in them. And yeah, the metal seems to wear. Whereas the Yokomo, I'm pretty impressed. They've got quite a. You can see there's some age to these Yokomo universal drive shafts, but they don't have a lot of play in them. So yeah, that's one up there for the Yokomo on the Tamiya. But yeah, the Tamiya is obviously running the CVD style shaft, and the Yokomo runs the universal. There we are. So it's time now to look at some anti-wear grease. Even though I think you can see that wear there, I think you can see that anti-wear grease probably isn't going to do all that much for it now. Now, it doesn't matter. I'm not looking to put these cars in a modern competition and flog the life out of them. It's just about getting them out onto the track, cutting some laps, having some fun, get some photos, some video if I can, and just reliving experiences. And so anyway, with the Yokomo shafts, I've ended up chasing down, and they were not cheap, these hardened steel universals. So I'm going to swap out the originals there for these hardened chrome steel. And we're going to put some anti-wear grease from the Tamiya into the Tamiya CVDs. And look, you know what? Just for the sake of this video, I'm going to do it. I might have just put molybdenum disulfide in there, but for this purpose of this video here, let's go with what Tamiya recommends. And here we are now onto the rear suspension. So these rear suspension arms, I always thought, geez, they must be very similar, but realistically, they're not even all that much alike, actually. In fact, they're not alike at all. Even the pivot pin hole size are different. The Tamiya is left only and right only, whereas the Yokomo is left or right. It doesn't matter. But yeah, you can see here that they are quite different and nowhere near the same. Also, on the pivot shaft there, this is how the suspension works off the suspension arm there in this ball studs. But I think Keith sent me over these white, heavy duty ball cups there, and so I'm going to put them on the car. And there we are with the alloy rear hub on the arm for the Tamiya left end. So here's the left one now. And now onto the Yokomo. And they both have captured hinge pins here, which is really cool, and those are a sign of the times. Even though Yokomo, previous to this, did have captured hinge pins in their MX4, they also did it here with the Mr4BX. So yeah, they're the aluminium rear hubs. You got left and right, which means they're going to have some toe in them. So yeah, the toe will come from the hub itself, not from the arm. Now there we are with both assemblies all together. Now I'm going to flip this Yokomo around and I'm going to install the rear suspension arms here. And it's worthwhile to note they also use the very similar design there as the Tamiya. They pop into with a ball there. And this rear plate here, you can get, this is a 3 degree of rear toe plate. They've also do a 2.5 degree that I've got, which I ended up actually swapping out and putting onto the rear because I thought 3 degrees rear is probably a bit too much for me. I'd like to have a little bit of more turning ability. 3 degrees will give me more stability, high speed stability down the straight, whereas they just won't turn as well. And I'm going to put this on a tight, twisty track, so I'm going to need a little bit less rear toe. And yeah, very similarly, the Tamiya goes together with another aluminium brace on the rear. So yeah, there are lots of similarities in that regard. They don't really, I don't think they borrow enough design ideas from one left to the right. I don't know. That can be up to you and see what you think of it. But yeah, anyway, I also got some of these little donuts, these little foam donuts. They're fantastic for popping over your ball stud so that when you put your camber link on there and the ball cup goes over, it stops dust from getting in there and also stops a little bit of extra, a little bit extra play as well. So yeah, on cars that I want to be a little bit serious about going to the track, I'll always buy those and fit those to my cars. Now onto the front suspension arm. So here we have the Yokomo. And obviously it's got a plastic front upright there. Very heavy duty though. I don't really have too many concerns about this car. I think that the arms are a little bit soft from memory. So Pedro told me that about his car, and the Tamiya were quite stiff actually. And obviously the world's version has that blue alloy upright there. The original version didn't have that. A little bit of play there from the arm in that front bulkhead, but what does it matter to me? You know, I'm sure once it all goes together, it's going to be fine. So we're just popping the pin in there, and then those both arms are held in place literally by the plastic bumper. So if that plastic bumper's gone, that pin's going to slide out. But anyway, that's the design, and that's how it works. So yeah, Yokomo were branching out with this car because they went from the MX4 onto their YMP. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called, and that was a Masaki design, from what I'm told. And basically, the YMP ended up basically evolving into the MR4BX. And you look, I absolutely do love the car. I like both cars. I actually prefer the Yokomo more, and I couldn't tell you why. It's just I just really desire the Yokomo. I think it's really cool, but the Tamiya is absolutely fantastic. I don't know how anyone can really say that it's not a cool rig. I know that from back in the day, I think it was Tech Racing was commissioned by Tamiya to design this car. I'm pretty sure that it was out of house. So look, if you know more about it than I do, correct me. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Tech Racing in Japan was responsible for the 501X, not maybe the regular Tamiya designers. But that's just the information I have from back then. So now on to the Tamiya Aeration front dampers. Now, I do not understand why I hear on YouTube people pronounce it as aeration. It's aeration. Aeration. That's what it is. Aeration. Aeration. Now, obviously, I spoke to Lou about this, and I've been doing a little bit of research myself, and I'm of the opinion that an aeration damper is a damper that has air inside with the oil, mixed with the oil, which I don't think such a great idea. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'd much rather be bleeding the air out of shock so that they're running a full hydraulic setup, so that literally you've only got the shock shaft moving in and the piston going through the oil. I don't know how great it is to have air as a part of the internal workings of the shock. I'm not an expert on that, so anyone who knows more can correct me in the comment section. By all means, shoot me down, correct me, whatever it is. But I'm more of the opinion that I prefer shocks where you can bleed the air out of the shock. So why else would you pump the piston through the oil as such, and then stand the shock, which is what you're meant to do. Stand the shock so that all the oil can, all of the air can bubble its way up out of the oil into the atmosphere, and then you would just top up, as I am here, 30 weight in the rear and 35 weight in the front. That's just where I start with my shock tuning. And yeah, so I would much rather get the air out of the shock absorber as much as possible. So there was an option with the shock caps here where you can drill a hole up there through the underside of the cap. So I'm going to take a small 1.5 millimeter drill bit here, and we're going to pop it into the drill, and we're going to drill out. This is exactly what's meant to be done if you want to go for the bleeder caps here. So yeah, that actually frees up that little venturi there, allows air to come up through that hole. So yeah, what I'm doing here is I'm wiping a little bit of oil just around those O-rings there. So as I'm winding the cap on, it's just not a dry O-ring, it's lubricated. So yeah, I'm gonna wind on the cap onto the top of the shock, and I'm gonna push the shock shaft up through to the full extent. And as you can see there, a little bit of air comes out, mostly oil. And now you take the screw and you wind it in, wipe off the excess of the oil there, and then you've got a really smooth, in my opinion, that's how a shock should be built. But, I'm not an expert. I'm just a hack. I just run a True Vintage RC YouTube channel, And I just make do with what I got, and it works for me. So yeah, anyway, on goes the springs and the spring perches onto the bottom of the shock, and making comparison there between the Yokomo and the Tamiya. Oh, again, it's really hard to go past the Yokomo. They're just absolutely gorgeous shocks. Love them to death. But the Tamiya shocks do work very, very well. And let me say, a very big step up from the old Tamiya CVAs. Yeah, no, these shocks really do work well, and I think they're definitely the second version of shock that was out there, because the one that came on the 501X didn't have those gold shock shafts. So, yeah, they came also as a gift from Keith years ago for another Tamiya buggy he sent me over, and this car did have some other shocks on it, and I took them off and I put these Tamiya TRF aeration dampers on there. So anyway, here we are looking at the rear of each car, and we're going to be installing the wing mounts. Quite different heights of wings going to go on the back of these cars, that's for sure. So yeah, and the Tamiya has an adjustable pitch for the rear wing, so you can put those spacers on there. So yeah, very similarly, they both bolt with a couple of 10mm screws each into the rear shock tower. And yeah, we're getting through this. So when I've did these two builds, I had about 4.5 hours of video I had to grind through to try and make it watchable for you guys. So now, the wheel on the left, the Yokomo wheel, is not the original wheel for this car, but I'm going to go with a pin drive front and rear on the Yokomo. So I've got these Yokomo rims here that are off a different model car. But anyway, that's what I'm doing. So yeah, look at that. Absolutely glorious. Both cars just look like $1 million, don't they? Now, these are not even new built cars. They're not mint new built cars out of the box. Didn't come out of a glass cabinet. Now, when Keith showed some of these 501X cars on his channel, he said, oh, I only really bought this one for a blue aluminium steering bridge. And I was like, mate, what would you want for that car? If you have no use for it, I'll buy it for you. And in true form with Keith, he won't take my money. So anyway, yeah, he sent me over the car, and wow, he included a bunch of extra bits and pieces with it as well, and thought I'd make the most of it and pull it down and give it a proper rebuild. So yeah, the other really cool thing about the Tamiya is it's got these little plastic pulley covers here, which are molded, and they're very nice. And I think early on, I don't think they had those. Now, the car that I had them, but I think the prototypes and stuff, I don't think they had those covers, but very sensible of them to put some time into making those. And the fit and finish of the Tamiya is absolutely fantastic, absolutely flawless. It goes together like butter. There's no problems with it whatsoever. Got great ball diffs. It's got a great setup. The only thing I wasn't keen on about the Tamiya over the Yokomo was the width of the belts, but I think if you got the right belt tension and you got those center pulley adjusters done up to stop the belt from skipping over the top of that pulley, I think you're going to have the battle halfway won. And of course, you want to adjust your slipper up correctly, so you're not just mashing the drive line on this car. But as we can see here, I'm going to wind manually through and show you. Now, I wasn't really happy again with the tension, so I ended up taking off those bulkheads and making some adjustments just to get it to run a little bit smoother, a bit freer. Same thing with the Yokomo. Wasn't happy enough with the belt tension, so I went back to those eccentrics on the diffs and got them to a happy place where I like them. And again, I'll focus on getting the slipper done correctly. But yeah, anyway, there are the the ball diff covers there. I've never had any issues with them. They work well for me in the cars that I've ran, and I can tell you now, it's a lot longer between needing rebuilds because you don't have all that dust and dirt getting in there. So yeah, the Tamiya had the hard plastic molded pieces that covered the pulleys, but again, we can call it agricultural. I don't really care. I really do like the clear Lexan covers that you put on the Yokomo. Oh man, it just looks cool. A little window to see in what the drive system's doing. Very cool. You just trim it out of that mold there. And the same, there's the front and the rear just gets double side taped onto that carbon fiber plate there that holds that pulley in place. So as an example, I'm just going to sit this piece of Lexan over it, and then you can see what I've done here. And I made up another little piece that goes on the back there, a square piece. Stops, I guess, Marshall's fingers going in there and getting hurt. Also stops rocks and things flicking in there, and maybe even stopping rocks from getting out. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, these tensioners are not a belt tensioner as such. What they do is they just keep the belt closer to the pulley by narrowing the space between that bearing and the belt itself. Onto the Tamiya's wheels. Now they're a hex drive front and they're a pin drive rear. That's how it was out of the factory. They're the Tamiya wheels that came with the car. And this is the wing for the back of the 501X. And there we are, all in place. And now let's get this car out of the way so we can put this new in packet, original Tamiya factory World's Edition body. So thank you, Keith, who also sent me this body along with the car. Your generosity just it just blows me away. Now, this little bubble on the side of the body really meant a lot. I can see why they did it, because back in the day, I remember the motor wires used to sort of rub against the body. So the World's Edition came with that bubble, and that's about as much as I can remember from it. This is a Penguin reproduction Lexan under tray. That's on the car now. And back to the Yokomo. Now we're putting the wheels, and I've gone with a pin drive front and rear on this car. Now it can have a hex or it can have a pin drive on this car. So there are options straight out of the factory. And now this is how the subsea cells were mounted in the chassis of the Yokomo. So they got these handy little plastic cradles that used to nurse the cells inside of the carbon fiber, stopping the carbon fiber from, cutting the sharp edges on the cells and, wearing and shorting them out. So anyway, I'm just fixing off now the straps that are held in place with some body pins, and they got a bit of foam, sticky foam on the underside of them, which just take up the slack, but there they are, nestling very nicely in those little plastic cradles in the chassis. So no shorting out there. And here is the Mr4BX body. So I've trimmed this out off camera, and this is new, of course, and it's a factory original. Now, those little bubbles, that's just overspray film, and that's just what this decal is basically telling you. Now, fixing the body onto the car. Yep, I absolutely love the look of it. Very low profile. No cab forward business here. Back when the cars looked really cool. And now let's get the subsea cells into the Tamiya. So I'm using the same cells for both cars because I've got two sets here. They're just 2400 milliamp hour cells, so they're still a NiCad. And this little plastic tub, I've had this for almost 20 years with that sticker on it, but I've had it longer than that. I had it back in my Bormac days, back in the very late 80s. I've had these plastic tubs forever. So here we are, just fitting the under tray onto the bottom of the 501X and the body. And finally, we're going to go with some glamour shots out on my back deck. We have a nice outdoor table setting there, and I wanted to get some natural sunlight on into these beauties, and I can share them with you and just help the audience appreciate also why I like them, and maybe you will too. What's your vote? Leave a description or leave something in the comments to say, which car you prefer. But also check out oopal.com. So Jimmy's forums and reviews from back in the day, absolutely cracking reviews. I'll leave a link in the description.